Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast presented by SeatGeek, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to the Pelicans Podcast. I am Joe Cardosi, joined by joyful Jim. I got to say, Jim, I've been going through it a little bit lately. I've been pumped up reading Pels news, getting ready for the season. That big win against the Pistons did not sate my thirst. I'm ready for some more wins. Let's talk about some Pels, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, this was a great last couple days. I mean, the way the back-to-back started was not great. They were down 22 points against Oklahoma City, but they come back and all the way and win that game. It was a little tight at the end, a little nail-biting, nerve-wracking, but they picked up a victory. So many good things happened as well in the win over Detroit. It's kind of funny to think that, I'm sure we're going to go through the list of just positives that happened in the game against the Pistons, but that wasn't even, so many excellent things happened against Detroit, but to me that wasn't even like the most noteworthy win of the two. So, things are going well when you have that situation where they come back from 20-plus against Oklahoma City win, come back the next night, they have multiple players out, even beyond the multiple players that we already had out. And, so many players stepped up in the situation that they're in right now where, you already had 3 rotation guys out before the season started. Zion and Brandon Ingram were not playing last night. BI's been out for a few games. That was Zion's first DMP. Bunch of different players. Matt Ryan makes the first start of his NBA career. I'll just score 20 points.
No big deal.
I'll make 6 3-pointers. Jordan Hawkins made his third start of his career. They're 2-1 in the games that he started. Dyson Daniels has been in kind of that 6-man role, I think, from the beginning. He's getting a nice opportunity to contribute a ton. Played 25 minutes last night. And then a guy, like Darian Sebron got to play 13 minutes. So, and pretty much across the board, these guys that are playing more than you would have expected even going into Thursday morning are all delivering and contributing a lot. So that's how you end up with a 4-1 start despite having a handful of guys that haven't been able to play. There's various teams around the league that have guys out and are saying, we're not winning because of that. And the Pelicans have still been able to prevail. So that's a really good sign.
Unfortunately, we've had to sort of deal with some of those lineups with our star players out. I guess that gives us a little bit of history. But what is great to see is the CJ McCollum renaissance. People are really starting to appreciate him out loud. 33 points to beat the Pistons in that game, 125-116. I feel like CJ has been absolutely clutch lately.
Yeah, and I think if you were making a case that he was hampered by injury last year and that was part of why he had some stretches where he struggled, I think your case is very much building right now because the way that he started this season has been very impressive. Like I said, with two of the 3 top scorers out of the lineup last night, the other team is going to come at you and they're going to run some extra defenders at you, and he still was able to go for 33 like you mentioned. Had 5 assists, 10 for 11 from the free throw line, which is big because the Pelicans did a huge turnaround on free throws compared to the OKC game. So, really good start for CJ McCollum and much needed.
We were on a back-to-back. I know you've got lots of notes. You've got your gym journal packed. What have you been seeing from these Pels? Now, Jordan Hawkins has been sort of thrown into the deep end early, and he's had some growing pains. I don't want people to get too down on him. It seems like the kid still has confidence. He's still an effective shooter when he gets his spots. Just seems like he's still adjusting to the NBA a little bit.
Yeah, that shot looks so pretty. He has had a couple games where he struggled to make them. He was 1 for 7 last night from the field and 1 for 5 on threes against Detroit. That's going to happen. His percentage so far is kind of low. He's shooting 27% from 3, but as I said, his shot looks so good that I feel like it's just a matter of time before those are going to go in.
Yeah, and the coach has told him, keep shooting, keep shooting, keep shooting. It seems like he's taken it to heart. It's only a matter of time before they start falling for the kid because, as you said, his shot is so pretty. And what that can unlock for this Pelicans team, especially at a time when we're hampered by injury, could be huge.
Definitely. And one of the things that we talked about before the season even started was, the Pelicans 3-point shooting. They were a very low volume team last year, and one of the goals was to get more of those up this season. I feel like they're definitely accomplishing that so far. They've been kind of middle of the pack in attempts, and they were 15th in 3-point percentage last year. That's decent.
Yeah.
But you don't have Trey Murphy, so you're concerned about that. But,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the stats through the first 5 games, CJ on super high volume, 9 attempts a game, is shooting 41%. Jonas is shooting 43%. Matt Ryan, with his incredible 6 for 8 game last night, is now 41% from 3. So, I mean, between those 3 guys and a couple other people have contributed. Larry Nance Jr. is 2 for 4.
Yeah.
That's 50%. Granted, a little bit low volume, but
Sure.
he's not going to take a bunch of those. But you add up all of those guys together, and I feel like the quote unquote problem has not been much of an issue so far. I mean, the Golden State game was really kind of everything went against them.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, we're talking 4 wins and a lot of good contributions.
Jim, one thing that we know keeps happening, the ball games don't stop coming. We've got another one coming up, and the Pelicans are going to continue to test their mettle. And you know what I'm super excited about? A bit of a homecoming on this podcast. My man, Mr. Daniel Sallerson, talking Hawks. I could not be more pumped. I don't even know if I'd have woken up this morning without Daniel Sallerson being the guest, as much as I enjoy your shining face, Jim. But man, great to hear from the guy who started over here with the Pels. You know him, you love him. We're excited to have him.
Yeah, looking forward to speaking with Daniel about the Hawks. Saturday's game is going to be, I think, pretty interesting. You have 2 teams that are playing really well. Pelicans are 2-0 off the back-to-back. The Hawks have won 3 games in a row. The Atlanta's had a pretty streaky start to the season, which is something that we're going to ask him about. So, not sure what Hawks team to expect, but I mean, they just beat Milwaukee the other night by a big margin at Milwaukee, which was a stunner for a lot of people. Kind of hard to figure them out, but that's something that we'll try to get to the bottom with Mr. Sallerson.
It's early in the season. Maybe by the end of the interview, I'll be able to convince him to grow out his Trae Young hair. We will see. I've been trying for a while. I've been trying it with everybody. I just want everyone to grow out Trae Young hair. But Mr. Sallerson is coming up, and we are so excited to talk to him. So let's get to the Magic Man himself.
Here's Daniel Sallerson.
Oh, you've heard that before, friends of the Pelicans podcast. You've heard it for many, many years, and you're going to hear it again because he's with us again. The rock guitars follow him everywhere he goes. It's not his fault, but Mr. Daniel Sallerson covering the Hawks, the hated Hawks. We got him on the podcast. So excited to have you, Daniel. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great now that I get to hear your voice and get to speak to you and Jim. So it's a great day. I appreciate you having me on the old podcast.
Oh, well, it's the house that Sallerson built. I'm just living in it. But man, we are off to an odd start, it seems. Maybe both of us. How do you feel about that Atlanta Hawks team as the season starts fresh? And what do you hope to see sort of rounded out early here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like the Hawks, they kind of got off to a bumpy start with their first 2 losses, one at Charlotte and one at home against New York. So 0-2 wasn't exactly how you wanted to start, I guess, year 2 of the Quinn Snyder era, even though he was there for half a year last year. But then they've won 3 in a row, and they've won it in kind of different ways. They've won at Milwaukee. It was a wire-to-wire win for them, which is something you probably won't see a lot when you're facing Giannis and Dame Lillard these days. And then you were on the second night of a back-to-back and came out horribly against the Timberwolves, down 20-some points, came back and won that game. And then for the 3rd game in a row, you were up big against Washington, almost blew that one at the end, but were able to hold on, and that's where they get to that 3-2. So what's funny is the roster hasn't changed that much since last year, but you have a full training camp, a full offseason with Quinn Snyder, and I think that's why they brought him in last year after the All-Star break to kind of get him a head start. And so expectations, I think, are a little higher in Atlanta, but, with not a lot of roster movement, I think everyone's still waiting to see how this team will be.
Daniel, it's just great to have you back on the Pelicans podcast.
Yes.
And by the way, Joe was saying to me before we started recording, he's like, make sure you bring up the Braves Phillies NLDS series.
Yeah,
and I was like, no, man, that's rude. I don't want to do that. I don't want to welcome. I don't want to come in hot. I haven't talked to him on the show in a while. I don't want to be rude to him. So I was like, okay, you're right. I finally won the argument though, and was like, I'm not going to bring that up on the show.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
anyways,
good for you.
Going to the Atlanta Hawks. But moving forward to the Atlanta Hawks, you talked about how they've had kind of a up and down start so far. Started out 0-2, won 3 in a row. What have you seen so far? I feel like a lot of people around the league have been wondering about Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, that combination. when they kind of joined forces last season, it seemed like everybody had really high hopes and expectations for them. How have they looked so far in the first 5 games of the season?
They've looked a lot better. I will admit that last year I think it was a little rocky for both of them to adjust to kind of the new responsibilities with both of them. I would say being ball dominant and playing with each other. I think Quinn tried to stagger them a little bit as much as they can. Obviously, they started at the same time, but I think a lot of them thrived when they were, not in the lineup at the same time all the time. But I think they've gotten better. I mean, last game they both had over 20 points and 5 assists. That's only happened, I think, 20 times since last season for them. They're 14-6 when they do that. So I think it's more of an adjustment for both of them as far as how they can kind of figure out which ways to not only make themselves better, but how to help others around them when they're both on the floor. So I think so far it's kind of been an early sample size, but I feel like they're improving on that. I think it's just time will tell, see if really Quinn Snyder can get them to buy into. I'm not saying they're not bought into what they're trying to do here, but it is an adjustment when you're kind of having to, Trey's used to being that number 1 point guard, and I think he still is, but so is DeJounte back in San Antonio. So it's been an adjustment for both, but I feel like early on it's been a little smoother than it was last year.
Daniel, I know you're in another state, and you're unfortunately not here anymore, but I know you keep an eye on the Pelicans as well. I mean, what is your impression and assessment of them so far, the fact that they're 4-1 and the fact that, they had multiple guys out of the lineup, but they've still been able to get off to this kind of start?
It's been quite impressive, and I actually been able to watch a few of them since they've been on national television a lot lately, which is good, especially that Oklahoma State Thunder comeback. But look, I was excited to see how they would look when healthy, and I think we're still trying to figure that out, which was, something that we've all dealt with in the past with them. But, the fact that I think the most impressive victory was against Detroit, just from the fact that you had no Zion, you had no Brandon Ingram, you had a guy like Matt Ryan who drained 6 threes. You have others stepping up, and I think that's what's most exciting about this Pelican squad is they're 4-1 without being fully healthy. You're missing your best 3-point shooter in Trey Murphy. You're missing one of your guys off the bench in Jose Alvarado, who provides a spark, that energy, that hustle. You still haven't had Brandon Ingram for a lot. Hopefully that right knee tendonitis feels better. And look, I mean, I might be missing someone as far as the injury list is concerned, but at the same time, I like what I've seen from Jordan Hawkins. His confidence from shooting from 3 is there. He just has that kind of quiet swagger to him that I really enjoy. And look, that 4-1 start's not surprising. I think the sky's the limit for them when they can get fully healthy and, add Trey back into the starting lineup and see what happens. But it's been pretty impressive what they've done despite having the injuries to start the season.
Yeah, I think Joe and I, you mentioned Jordan Hawkins' confidence. I mean, for a rookie to come in and look that way is really a good sign. I mean, there's a couple other players on the Pelicans that have come in the last couple of years, including somebody like Trey Murphy, who's panned out and turned into a really good player, but I don't think necessarily maybe it wasn't necessarily a confidence thing, but the results weren't there right away. So for Jordan to be able to step into the starting lineup and be like, yeah, I belong here and this is where I'm supposed to be, that's definitely a positive. So
yeah, and I like that as the Jim Eichenhofer swagger too. You taught him well, right when he got in, Jim sort of taught him,
of course,
the swagger class. Keep shooting.
That's part of being in this franchise is you have to pick up, the swag that I provide to everyone. So
Jim brings the swag.
I played football with Jim a lot, during my 10 years there in New Orleans, and Jim had the same swagger on the basketball court as he was off the court. I mean, you see him on the court, drains threes, whether he has kind of that. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say the Jordan Poole confidence where he turns around and then when he shoots and then misses it.
No, I've never done that.
Jim knows what he's doing. And that I can see that maybe on media day, Jim was like, all right, listen, Jordan, here's how it's really done. And, it paid off for him on the court, and I think Jim deserves a lot of credit for the start that Jordan Hawkins had.
That's the baptism, man. When I first started full-time with the Pelicans, I remember every day for about a month, Jim would just put a goal on top of my head and dunk on me right when I walked in the door, and it set the tone. I knew, how I had to be. I knew I had to be locked in. We were talking about Jordan Hawkins, and he's had some sort of rough stretches, but it seems like his confidence isn't lacking. The stroke is smooth. It's a beautiful shot. It seems like it's just a matter of time before that starts going in, and that's going to add a huge element to this team, especially when they need some spacing on the floor.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is the 3-point shooting for this team. And look, I mean, they came out of their slump yesterday against Detroit. I mean, that was a huge way, especially the way they shot against Oklahoma City in that first half from 3. and then how they turned it around in the second half and then carried that over into that Detroit game, despite, traveling in that day, which is a hard thing to do as well. You're absolutely right, Joe. The fact that you want Jordan to keep shooting those shots because they're going to fall. You don't want him to lack that confidence. You want him to start not trusting his shot because that's what got him to the NBA in the first place. So I think the best recipe is for him to keep shooting. The looks are there. The confidence is there. The shots are going to start to fall. And once they do, like you said, can you imagine how tougher they're going to be in trying to defend Jordan Hawkins? When you get Trey Murphy back, you're going to have to worry about him. You have Zion and B.I. on the floor at the same time. That's where it gets dangerous for other teams and worrying about the Pelicans is once those three-point shooters are on the court with them, it's pick your poison time. And most of the time, whatever you pick is probably going to be wrong if the Pelicans are shooting well.
Yeah, we very much look forward to that, Daniel, that when the full roster's out there, I do think that there will have plenty of shooting. Speaking of things to look forward to, I feel like the timing of us getting you on today, we'd be remiss to not mention the in-season tournament and kind of get your thoughts on it. What do you think overall of the idea, the concept of it? Is it something that you thought was a good idea, something you were in favor of?
Yes and no. I get why they're doing it, but I kind of want to see more of what the players, if they like it or not, and even the fans. Is there going to be much bragging rights? Whoever wins this first midseason tournament, obviously for the players, and I think now the coaches, they announced there is some financial, benefits for winning this thing or going to the semifinals and the finals. But what about the fans? Are they going to be like other leagues, where soccer and the Premier League and they have all these different cups and championships that, those are really important? Is the midseason tournament going to be like that? I guess what's the value for a team winning it besides, the financial implications? So that's what I really want to see as far as the fans, how they embrace it. And if it's something like, look, if the Pelicans win, is there going to be a banner going up in the Smoothie King Center, for the midseason tournament champions? Is there going to be a parade, or is it a half parade because it's the midseason? Maybe they just go down Tom Benson Way and circle around. Sure. That will be the chance. You and Joe are riding in convertible with shades on and champagne popping.
As we always do, though.
You do that anyways, but maybe there's a reason for you doing it now.
Yeah.
If they it, but I think it's kind of a wait and see. I like that Adam Silver's trying things, and I like the hype. I like that there's different uniforms, different courts. I wish I was colorblind with some of these courts, the way they're looking at these photos. But at the same time, I think it'll be fun. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, we were actually talking about on a previous podcast. So some of these courts look like laser tag arenas or something. It's a little odd, but it is going to be fun. We were sort of talking about the same thing. The in-season tournament is intriguing, and I like that Adam Silver has been trying new things. A lot of leagues are just content to just stick the same old product out there unchanged year after year. He is tinkering, and he is trying to see what fan interest is going to be. It's just odd to me that it's this early in the season that you're going to start to see this start to take hold, because for me, I thought an in-season tournament would be maybe those fringe teams that are kind of hanging outside the playoffs that might have an entry key in, whereas starting this early, I think a lot of fans are going to have to adjust to how this tournament works, what the rules are, what the parameters are for advancing. Seems like it might be a little confusing at first.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think maybe, I can't speak for Adam Silver, maybe some of the reasoning is look, a lot of people think that during this part of the NBA season, everyone's paying attention to football, NFL, college football. And then once Christmas starts, with the big games, and everyone kind of focuses on the NBA. I think maybe this kind of draws attention to the fact that there is something bigger happening in the beginning of the year. So maybe more fans will tune in to kind of see what this in-season tournament is all about. Yeah, the group play is kind of like a World Cup in soccer. It is just kind of confusing as far as the schedule a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, look, a lot of people complain about whether the regular season, what's the point of it? You have players resting a lot. Yep. That's been a point of emphasis as far as not resting guys, as far as nationally televised games. So I think this is more of an incentive to do it early and be like, hey, these games matter. You need to play your players. And if you do, here's how you could be rewarded by winning a ton of money and playing in this midseason tournament. So I agree with you. I get why Adam Silver's doing it. And I think this is kind of going to be a trial run. And look, like you mentioned, Joe, if it goes well or something needs to be tinkered, then maybe you move it till afterwards where more people can focus on it once football season ends. So I definitely think that this will be a good test for them, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting experiment. There are going to be some growing pains, I'm sure, but I just appreciate that it's happening. We'll see how it goes. Mr. Daniel Sallerson, I swear you are missed every single day here in the Pelicans facility. Not a day goes by where Jim and I don't sigh and go, Remember Daniel. You are missed, my friend. Please tell the people how to check you out when you host the Atlanta Journal-Constitution podcast with Lauren Williams. Please tell people how to find you out on the web.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Or I doubt any of you in New Orleans have a subscription to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but it's in there as well. But anywhere you get your podcast, it comes out every week. There's actually a new one out today just talking about the Hawks' 3-game winning streak. We also do a little deep dive on the New Orleans Pelicans since I have a little bit of familiarity with them. Nice. We do preview tomorrow's game against the Hawks, and so I'm looking forward to that game too. I think it's a great test for both teams to kind of see where both of them at, especially if you do get Brandon Ingram back in the fold. I think it'll be an early in-season test, and I think it'll be a great game. And I appreciate you having me on. This just made my day that I get to talk to you both. And I hope you all are doing very well.
Man, we're doing as well as we can be without Sallerson in our direct lives, but we're doing well, man. Thanks so much for hopping on. And best of luck to your team. Not too much luck, but you never know. There might be some New Orleanians who are subscribed to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution just to be moles, to get the inside info. So keep them coming, man.
Hey, I just root for both teams to have fun tomorrow.
Yeah, let's all just have fun.
I like that.
I like that. That's nice. That's the classic Sallerson outro that we needed. Daniel, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Good luck to your Hawks this season. Again, not too much. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you again.
All right. Thanks, Boo.
Oh my goodness gracious, my heart and my soul are full, Jim. You in studio, Daniel Sallerson on the telephone. The sun is a little warmer and brighter. I feel good. But as we were talking about with Mr. Sallerson, I still feel like a lot, based on the tweets I see, based on the calls we get, a lot of people still are trying to figure out this tournament. And I don't know if we helped them on this podcast as much as we may have wanted to. But again, Jim's got a huge map up there. Like, he's got a huge conspiracy theory, and he will help us through it.
Yes.
So Jim, walk the dummies like me through this, please.
So basically, you have 5 teams in each group that the NBA has divided up, kind of randomly drawn. In the Pelicans group, the other 4 teams are Denver, Dallas, the Clippers, and Houston. Those 5 teams are going to play each other team once, so that'll be a total of 4 games. And then after the group stage and pool play, if you have the best record in your group, you will advance to the quarterfinals, which is, the top 8 teams in the NBA will still be alive and have a chance. There will be 1 team from each group. There's 3 groups in both the East and the West, and then there will be 1 wild card. So one of the things, to try to be concise and kind of get to the point, one of the things that I've kind of thought about and noted, there hasn't been a ton of discussion about this yet, but to me, you basically are only going to be able to lose 1 game in group play in the pool play part of it and still, I think, have a chance. If you go 2-2 out of your 4 games, I think mathematically you're pretty much done. It's going to be impossible. Yeah. So even though the group stage in the pool play isn't sudden death and it's not, elimination kind of setup, it still is such where there's just not a lot of margin for error. So you need to try to finish 3-1 or 4-0 to be able to advance. 4-0 will definitely get you to the next round. 3-1, you'll still have an opportunity depending on a billion other outcomes and such. But that's basically what the way the setup is. Pelicans start on November 10th, which is a week from today, at Houston. That's going to be an important game right off the bat because if you lose that game, you're obviously 0-1, and then your next 2 games in the group stage are home against Dallas and home against Denver, 2 teams that are off to great starts. So you definitely want to beat Houston, start off 1-0, going into a couple teams that look like juggernauts early in the season.
You got the Hawks, you got the Nuggets, you got the T-Wolves, you got the Rockets, Mavs again, Nuggets again, T-Wolves again. So you're going to find out about this team pretty early. It seems like as many growing pains as they may be trying to work out, you're going to find out about the identity of this Pelicans team, and hopefully that grit shows up and they're able to weather that storm when things sort of lighten up. But it's going to be a fun season, man, and like we said, we've got a lot of new moving parts here and a lot of things to keep eyes on. So the Jim formation is going to keep on rolling, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that injury report out later today, I believe.
Yeah, it's usually the deadline is 5 p.m. local time the day before a game of the injury report. We usually will get it maybe around 4:30, somewhere in the 4 o'clock hour. So we'll get an update on Brandon Ingram in terms of what his status is for the Saturday game against Atlanta, whether that's changed. He's been questionable the last couple games, hasn't been able to get onto the floor. You mentioned, by the way, too, the stretch of schedule coming up. not only I think is it going to be a really good test, but after this Atlanta game, you have like 10 to 12 consecutive games against Western teams.
Yeah.
So you're talking a very important stretch of the schedule, even though we're still only in November.
That's
and we're
where you
still
can
very
make some
early.
hay, yeah, for sure.
Right. But the stretch starts with Atlanta on Saturday. Just wanted to mention matchup to watch for me in the keys to the game is going to be Jonas Valanciunas versus Clint Capella at center. Two, more conventional, traditional centers that do a lot of damage around the basket. Clint Capella is a big-time alley-oop lob threat, so that's something the Pelicans are going to have to look out for.
Yeah.
Jonas coming off a great game against Detroit. He had 23 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks. I mean, that might have been...
I'm growing my Jonas beard, dude.
Yeah, you should.
He did it.
That's one of the best all-around games that he's had since he's been in New Orleans. He's had a lot of 2010 games and a lot of games where he's been a great scorer in the paint and grabbing every rebound in sight, but he also, like I said, blocked 3 shots. Herb Jones had 4 to help out in that category a ton. But yeah, Jonas is rolling coming into this game against Clint Capella. And then Monday he's got Jokic in Denver. Wednesday he's got Gobert and Towns with Minnesota. So that might be a player to watch on Monday. We'll see. That's just a little tease there.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it, but now that I'm thinking in my head, I'm going through in my head all of these matchups.
Bait, yeah.
But this will be fun on Saturday against the Hawks. A lot of good guard matchups as well, but I thought I would go with Valanciunas versus Capella.
Well, he deserves it, man. He's been playing great, and it's great to see. So get ready, Pelicans fans. Get into the Smoothie King Center tomorrow at home. We want to see you loud and proud wearing your Pels gear. You're going to get to your first look at that City Edition beanie. That's going to be the giveaway. So if you want to check out that neon beanie, it is very cool. That is the giveaway. So get there early. You can check out the action on Bally's and, of course, on the radio on 99.5 WRNO.
They'll also be wearing the City uniforms for the first time in that Atlanta game as well.
Call.
So you can kind of get to see those on the court. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. Saw a few people in the stands already with those jerseys last night, which was cool.
Like, where are they, on the dark web or something? They got it quick. But, man, yeah, we want to see you out in your jerseys. So get loud, get into the Smoothie King Center, cheer for your Pels. Let's get this season rolling. Big thanks to Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. Big thanks to Mr. Daniel Sallerson. Boy, have we missed him. And big thanks to you for listening to the Pelicans podcast. Please tell your friends and pals and spread the word. We will talk to you once again on Monday. And until then, Jim, I'm not feeling too great. You may have to handle it.
Go Pels.
Yes!
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek.